Some relationships are just doomed from the start. Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage, Larry King and any woman on planet Earth ever, and Bally and sports. You might well know the latter from its ill-conceived sponsorship of the former Fox Sports regional networks, or perhaps you're familiar with their role in the incredulous relocation of the Oakland A's. I'm Cheyenne Hollis, this is the Touchback, and we are gathered here today to talk about what is one of the most unholy matrimonies imaginable. It's Bally, it's sports, a match made in hell. The story of Bally and sports starts with the noble, majestic sport of dog racing. Oh, we are not off to a good start here, people. Anyway, a group of real estate and hospitality-focused investment firms partnered up under the name of BLB Investors to purchase Lincoln Park, a dog racing track and the connected casino in Rhode Island, along with a few other properties in 2005. The key provision of the deal was an agreement with the Rhode Island government that would allow BLB to expand the casino operations at this site. Renovations were completed on the eve of the global financial crisis, which meant people were less inclined to go what was then called a race-cino. Long story short here, BLB Investors would file for bankruptcy in 2009. It would eventually close all of the dog tracks, and in 2011, it reemerged as Twin River Worldwide Holdings. After a few years of finding its financial footing, Twin River would start buying up just about every dumpy casino in America that hit the market from the mid-2010s onward. So what about the actual Bally company you've most likely heard of? Well, they began back in the 1930s manufacturing pinball machines and various other amusement games before eventually becoming the market leader in slot machines. It was a wildly successful brand over the years, due in large part to the rise of Las Vegas, which fueled slot machine business, and of course the popularity of pinball machines in America. Bally also played a crucial role in video games, publishing Pac-Man and Space Invaders among other classics. And then the 1980s hit. Flush with cash and probably fueled up on cocaine, Bally just started buying up any and every asset it could during this time. Some of these investments were successful, such as Bally Total Fitness. Other moves, like acquiring the Six Flags theme parks, were disastrous to say the least. Ultimately, Bally would switch its focus from making slot machines for casinos to simply just owning casinos outright, and this is probably what most people recognize the Bally name for in modern times. Eventually, the company was acquired by Hilton in 1996 and then included in just an endless string of transactions and mergers between that year and 2020. That brings us back to Twin River Worldwide Holdings. You see, by the year 2020, the Bally brand and name had found itself under ownership of Caesars Entertainment. The name was used for some properties under its watch, including Bally's Atlantic City. That casino and resort is one that had drew the attention of Twin River as it was looking to expand its empire of sea-level casinos in the United States. At some point in the negotiations between Twin River and the Caesars Entertainment Group over the Atlantic City Casino, the focus shifted on the actual Bally brand, which Twin River wanted to buy outright as well. A deal was eventually reached for the Bally brand for roughly about $20 million. Then Twin River decided that it was going to do massive rebranding, changing its name to Bally's Corporation and just really leaning into this new identity. Eventually, this included all of its casinos to include the Bally brand. It was certainly a bold move to go all in on a name and branding that many Americans associated with a defunct chain of fitness centers. It was also a sign of things to come as it relates to the logic of the company and its sporting interests. The newly rechristened Bally's Corporation found itself wanting a piece of the sports betting pie, but was super late to the party. As you'll see, its strategy in this landscape was to throw money at anything, regardless of how dumb the idea seemed. This brings us to the group's first foray into the sporting realm, Bally Sports, the former collection of Fox Sports regional networks. Shortly after the rebrand, the company announced a naming agreement with Diamond Sports Group, the entity majority owned by Sinclair Broadcast Group, which had purchased all of those regional sports networks. For Bally, they got their name plastered all over this group of 21 regional sporting networks, as well as what was called content integration, but what was essentially putting lines and bets and whatever into broadcasts and other programming. For Sinclair, they pocketed annual naming rights fees, a committed percentage of Bally's marketing spend, and the ability to purchase a 14.9% stake in Bally's corporation. This cannot be stressed enough. This was a terrible investment at the time. There is no hindsight needed here. When Bally got into the regional sports network game, it was a dying industry. A month prior to the agreement with Bally, YouTube TV and Hulu had stopped carrying the regional sports networks altogether. And only 14 days before announcing the naming rights agreement, Sinclair wrote down the value of the regional sports business. This wasn't a sign of good things coming. This was Bally just getting hosed on what looked to be a bad deal. Let's put a pin in this for the time being and move on to some of Bally's other sports ventures. We'll start in 2001 when the company made a bunch of other acquisitions as it looked to beef up its sports betting offerings, as well as other sales funnel tools that could drive people to its casinos and apps. There was the acquisition of SportsCaller, an app that specialized in free-to-play games that could be either integrated into someone's app or just be created as standalone apps themselves. Their tech is solid and has been used by a number of other prominent companies in the sports betting landscape, but Bally just had no clue on what to do with SportsCaller. There is the Bally Sports Trivia app that has become nothing more than an afterthought. They developed a Bally branded fishing fantasy game app. At the end of the day though, Bally just had no idea how to leverage SportsCaller and what it does as an app and what its tech does. I mean, maybe on the surface it seemed like a good idea to buy, but in reality, it's just been money pissed down the drain by Bally's. Speaking of money pissed down the drain, Bally acquired the daily fantasy sports site Monkey Knife Fight in early 2001. At the time, it was actually the third largest DFS player. The match on the surface here makes a lot of sense. Bally wanted to get into the DFS space. Monkey Knife Fight was third behind FanDuel and DraftKings, so you can see the synergy there. Unfortunately though, no one at Bally knew what the hell it was doing. So much so that the platform was shut 2 years later after losing large amounts of money because there was absolutely no leadership or a plan from Bally's. Like, this is just an utter failure on the part of the company. Speaking of epic failures, in 2023, Bally actually closed its own sports betting app for a couple of months because it was so massively underwhelming. Despite having bought a technology company that specialized in building sports betting apps, it actually had to shift away from that to a third-party operator. In most states Bally apps operate in, it has less than a 1% share of the total market. And yeah, the sports betting online space for Bally has been an unmitigated disaster. One of the more head-scratching decisions by Bally's in recent times was its decision to purchase the Association of Volleyball Professionals, the largest and longest-running volleyball tour in the United States. Volleyball as a whole is seeing a surge of interest across America. So what did the new owners of the AVP do to capitalize on this increase in interest? Well, they just didn't invest a dime in it. One of the reasons Bally purchased the AVP was for content that it could broadcast on those Bally sports channels. And yet they did nothing to expand the tour, create more events, and eventually handed ESPN Plus broadcast rights to some events. Let's return to that investment in regional sports network naming rights. Their partner in this endeavor, Diamond Sports Group, went bankrupt. A couple of channels have been wound down, and the entire situation is bleak, with most people thinking it's only a matter of time before regional sports networks are just shuttered entirely. For Bally, though, their investment has put their name front and center on this sinking ship, so much so that many people assume Bally actually owns these failing television channels. Many people have assumed that it's Bally's that have gone bankrupt when they hear about this because it's their name plastered on everything. It's safe to say Bally's has gotten a pretty negative return on investment here because they are now associated with a bankrupt, failing group of networks. If we are being honest though, it's fairly fitting considering just how poorly all of their investments in the sporting realm have turned out. Failed betting app? Check. Failing to launch free-to-play games despite owning the technology? Double check. Buying a sport that is growing in popularity and then sitting on it? Triple check. With all of this in mind, it should come as no surprise that Bally's is somehow involved with the biggest swindle in sports in recent times, the Oakland Athletics move to Las Vegas. All of this began in 2022 when Bally's Corporation agreed to purchase basically everything on the Tropicana casino and hotel site apart from the land, which they signed a 50-year lease agreement for. Like just about every other casino under the Bally's brand, the Tropicana is old, uninteresting, and really just a failing property. It's undoubtedly the worst hotel on the Las Vegas Strip. Bally's wanted to do something with this site because it is a good location, there is potential there. However, those in charge seemingly had no idea of what actually to do with it. Then bumbling moron and failed businessman John Fisher came stumbling into Las Vegas looking for a place his baseball team could call home. After flirting with a few sites, someone at the Tropicana had a grand idea. Let's make another desperate investment in sports. They offered Fisher 9 acres of land for free on which he could use to build a baseball stadium which would eventually serve as an anchor for whatever resort Bally's ends up building on this site. I've covered the Oakland A's relocation and just what a stupid proposition that is at length here on the channel, so I'm not going to rehash that today. What I will say though is this: every last investment Bally's Corporation has made in regards to sport has been an absolute shit show. It has been terrible. It has failed. They have wasted a comical amount of money on various things related to sport, none of which can be classified as even remotely successful. A lack of leadership, or even something as simple as a tangible plan, has sank all efforts Bally has tried to make in the sports landscape. Bally's and sports has truly been a match made in hell. What this means for the Oakland Athletics or any other sporting related organization the firm touches remains to be seen. But as a betting man, I would take any wager against Bally's having success with sports because the track record shows us that Bally's and sports, it just don't work out, folks. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about how streaming has ruined sports, you can check out the video in the upper right hand corner of your screen. That does it for me. I'm Cheyenne Hollis. This is the Touchback, and as always, hashtag take it out to the 25.